DevOps. Who's a DevOps? No, you're not. You're not. We're going to get to why you're not, but seriously, you can never raise your hand and do that. If I was like, are you a hip-hop? Would you do it? Would you be like, woo, I'm Jay-Z? You wouldn't. You would. It's because you work with him and they do weird stuff to your brain. Who's a business person? I'm a business person. I got you in the air quotes because sometimes it's fuzzy. Who's an executive? I got a C in my title. I'm totally an executive. What's up? Darren's an executive. Only 3 executives in the whole room. I know them all. That's networking. Okay. That's a new slide. All right. So I already told you I'm Chief Product Officer at Opscode and what that means. Really, under the hood, though, I'm a systems administrator. I've been one for 15 years. I will probably be one when I die. I'll probably be, I don't know, tweaking on my heart-lung machine or whatever. In my background,
We're crushed by a server.
I've done a lot of mergers and acquisitions. So I've seen a lot of different infrastructure and a lot of different applications that were written really badly by a lot of weird people doing weird stuff, some of which they sold for millions of dollars. And if you want to feel really good about starting your own business, do mergers and acquisitions for a while and be like, I'm totally as good as those chuckleheads. So I did that a lot. And then I had a consulting company that did basically the same thing. I would come in, you pay me, I don't know, like 30 or 50 grand up front, and I would build you a fully automated infrastructure from scratch. It was cool. Then that became Opscode and Chef, and I wrote Chef basically to solve my consultancy problems. So my background, founded a venture-backed startup, did some consulting, did a bunch of mergers and acquisitions. I'm a systems administrator, I'm a programmer, I'm an operations person, and so those are the sorts of things that I like to talk about because that's all I really have. You know, I'm shallow. So what do you guys want to talk about? That's all I've got about me. So the way this works. We have a grid, and on this grid, we got topics, right? And this little tiny room, which all of us are in, which is awesome, it's way better in a tiny room, so don't be like, why wasn't this talk in a big room? Oh, it's good. No, it's better down here. This is where we belong. It's in the dark. So, yeah, sorry, I'll get to the point. You got topics, and what's going to happen is, in a second, I'm going to kind of let the dogs out. And you guys are going to shout out which one of these topics you would like me to talk about. And then I'm going to talk about it. Now, unlike most talks, where there's like, take the questions at the end, that's not true with this talk. You should interrupt me, you should heckle me, you should be like, no, that's wrong. And if this talk is totally boring, and it's just me like having to drop swear words every third word to get you to laugh, because I'm totally cheap like that, see, that almost worked. And if I had said cheap like that, fuck, you'd laugh harder. So, see, thanks for what I'm doing. This is what you get when you grow up on Eddie Murphy. So, if you watch this stuff, I'll go through the list here real fast. So I can talk about DevOps and why it is that it's not your job title, and if you raise your hand, you bother me on a personal level. I can talk about how to manage operations teams and what it means to be in operations and what it means to actually think about that from a business point of view. I can talk about service-oriented architectures and configuration management. These two things kind of come together. I wrote a chapter for the WebOps book that Don Alspaugh curated. This is sort of the super quick summary of that chapter in the WebOps book. So if you've read it and didn't understand it, maybe this will help. If you didn't read it and you think it's cool, then we can talk about it. There's a thing I like to call, I didn't make this up, it's called the no asshole rule. And if you don't know about the no asshole rule, you should. It's very important. It's the best thing you can do with your life. I'll explain. Sales and marketing. I've got a C in my title, I'm a business guy, and I've gone through the process of hiring sales dudes and hiring marketing. Wave your hand, sales dude. That's my sales dude, one of them. That's Rodney Jones from Alabama. He'll call you on the phone. He'll be like, now a good time? Alright, so. And you want to say yes. And it's sort of right for the sales and marketing side, so you're going to dig it, trust me, sales and marketing. Philosophy of automation, I like to talk about philosophy. If you saw my lightning talk, you know why. Building open source communities, there's a picture of Barack Obama and Chevelle in that slide deck. So, but it's good advice. I can talk about Chef. There was a Chef tutorial. So if you really, really wanted to know about Chef, you probably should have gone to that. But if you want me to talk about Chef, I totally will. I get paid for it. It's cool. 8 tips for full automation. This is sort of a super fast version of a talk I used to give a long time ago that kind of outlined the different things you have to do in order to reach a fully automated infrastructure. If you skip any of them, then you don't get to be fully automated. You should be mostly automated. And finally, systems administrators are polyglots, which means everybody in this room who raised their hand and said their systems administrator knows more than one programming language, even if you don't know it. So, and random advice. If you ask for random advice, you can just ask me anything you want, and I will just give you a talk about it. I can't promise it'll be any good, but I will do it. So, with that said, what do you want to hear? No assholes! I heard no assholes most strongly. Probably because they're assholes. Okay. Admitting you're an asshole is the first step. No one is free when others are oppressed. You are an asshole if, after encountering you, people feel oppressed, humiliated, or otherwise worse about themselves, and you tend to target people less powerful than you. Got it? So it's actually kind of hard to be an asshole, right? It's not just being grumpy or having a bad day. Everybody has a bad day. This is like, I talk to you and now I feel shitty for a day, right? You're an asshole when you're the guy who does that to someone else. Chronic assholes cannot stop ruining people's days. They can't do it, no matter what they do. And it means no matter who they are, or how good they are, or how smart they are, or how much you like them, or how pretty they are fucking incompetent. They are terrible at whatever it is that brings them into your life. If it's in your job, it's even worse. So if the smartest guy you know, and the smartest person you work with, you hate to talk to him, he's incompetent. He is not the best employee you have, he's the worst employee you have, and I will prove it with science. And it doesn't matter how smart you are. So, here's where we start with the science. Bad is stronger than good. Positive interactions have to outnumber negative ones 5 to 1. So, when I see Simon, I'm often mean to Simon. He comes in and I'm like, I don't want to see you, Simon. And Simon's like, oh, I like you. And so then he has to go talk to Arthur and be like, Arthur, why was that mean to me? And like 5 other people he has to go to. How many people have had that happen? Like somebody's mean to you, you have to tell people how mean they were. And then you have to tell another person how mean they were. You need sympathy and the whole thing. 5 to 1. And those interactions actually cascade a little bit, right? So then they tell somebody else the terrible thing about the terrible story that happened to you, right? Like it's an infection, it's disease. And they are stronger, more pervasive, and they have longer lasting effects. So if I have a nice conversation, if I come in as I actually did and was like so happy to see Simon, that was great, but if somebody then came in and was an asshole to Simon, all of that is totally wiped away. And will continue to be wiped away for a while until he talks to a bunch of people about it. Over half of the people who experienced instability at work reported they lost time worrying about the incident and its consequences. So this is kind of nuts, right? This means that half the people who were at work and somebody was an asshole to them, they actually went home and they took it home with them. They thought about it and they worried about it and they talked to their wives and like they had this whole big cascading side effect of jerkdom. So there's 3 typical bad apples, kinds of people who in the workplace tend to become chronic assholes. And there's 3 kind of different stereotypes for chronic assholes. The first one are withholders of effort. The second are people who are effectively negative. And the final people are my favorite because they get sparkles, interpersonal deviants. So, a withholder of effort, these are people who intentionally dodge their responsibilities to the group and just free ride off other people, right? These are people, if you're an economist, you call these people shirkers. If you're a sociologist, they're free riders. If you're a psychologist, they're social loafers. And everybody else just says they're lazy people. Everybody probably has worked with these people at some point in their lives. So the people who just, no matter how hard you ask them to do anything, I work with the dude, I like the dude, he's a good guy. He had to do one thing, install Nagios in a data center in Las Vegas. That was it. I gave him that task the day he was hired. 6 months later, no motherfucking Nagios. Hadn't done a thing. Not even the first thing. Day 1 of his job, 6 months. Withholder of effort, kind of an asshole. Felt bad about it every time I met him. Every time I saw him, I was like, oh man, it's a bummer. So, people who are effectively negative. These people continually express a negative mood or attitude. These are people who are pessimistic, they're anxious, they're insecure, and they're irritable. Honestly, if there's a single thing that is most likely true in this room if you're an asshole, you're probably effectively negative, right? We tend to be dour and a little pessimistic. But for the record, you have to be way high on that scale. You can't just be like a little dour or like Dutch, right? You have to be. What? You know I'm right? Okay, so you have to really like not be cool, and it has to like pervade you, right? It's not like the dude in the Charlie Brown cartoon. Interpersonal deviants. These are people who violate interpersonal norms of respect. They make fun of people. They make inappropriate ethnic, religious, or sexist remarks, and they publicly embarrass people. These are the ASCII dong guys. You know what I'm talking about? Like, they're probably in this room, and the rest of my life is going to be just ASCII dongs on Twitter. But like, this is interpersonal deviance. Like, there are people who when that stuff shows up, they feel bad about it, and it's not cool. And there are probably people who think I'm interpersonal deviant because I go for the cheap laugh. with the swear words in public. But
Fuck 'em.
that's right. Fuck those people. Yeah, and the reason, honestly, is that in this room it seems cool. Like, everybody seems fine with it, so I'm not probably deviating your norms. But as a group, as a tribe, we tend to celebrate smart bastards, right? I think the bastard operator from hell was funny. I think everybody does. ASCII DOMs. Lots of people laugh at them. This is really common. X is a piece of crap because of Y, right? Insert whatever technology you want and whatever thing has been talked about. The thing that was most irritating to me about this lately, anybody here use RVM? Alright, Wayne wrote RVM. RVM is an amazing piece of shell scripting. It's beautiful. It's like a cathedral of delight for shell scripting if one could actually have such a thing. And people get down on Wayne because they didn't like the way he took over CD. So then he listened to them, changed it so it wasn't on by default, and he still gets beat up about it in public. Drives me crazy. He feels terrible about it every time you say it. Every time somebody's like, I can't believe you made this terrible decision. This incredibly smart person who gave this incredible gift to the Ruby community feels terrible about himself for days on end. Has to talk to his wife about it, has to go to a bar and talk to people about it. I don't even know the guy, but I know that's what he's doing because I feel that way every time somebody says it about the stuff that I wrote, especially if it's just meaningless dribble. Z is an idiot because they built X and Y way. I think that X summed that one up. We do this stuff all the time, especially on Twitter. And it's horrible, Twitter fail. And doing it undermines the entire industry. If you think about those statistics I gave you earlier, where it takes 5 to 1 to get back to it, and it kind of spreads like a disease, this means that industry-wide, we've created this enormous inefficiency of assholes, where by allowing those people to exist in our lives, we undermine ourselves universally, right, in this horrible way. And it just hampers our competitiveness, and it damages our open source communities, and it damages our companies. So, be nice. Try to leave with questions, not statements, right? Why did MongoDB not persist data to disk by default? Answer, because it wanted to be real fast. So that's cool. Understand the effort and time other people invested. You maybe don't like what they built, that's fine. Understand at least that they put in a bunch of time and effort for it, and avoid the passive-aggressive snark, which I think we're all famous at, and I've probably done in this portion of this talk. Don't be an asshole. Assholes are incompetent. And if you spot an asshole, the thing to do is shun them. So, all those people in your life who do that thing to you all the time, don't negotiate. You don't talk to them and try to get them to see the better value of not posting ASCII DOMs. You just stop listening and you walk away. And if they work for you or they work in your company, you fire them because they're incompetent. And whatever it is they did that you thought was important, it's not so important, you can't fire them. Next. What was that?
8 tips for full automation.
8 tips. I got 99 problems, but if they change one. I don't know why that image is there. But don't you dig it? Like, just the idea of Jay-Z being out there, like, what? So there's a couple things you need to deal with if you're going to build a cloud infrastructure. You need to answer questions about provisioning, answers about DNS, server inventory, config management, identity management, version control, monitoring, training, and app deployment. Provisioning. You got to get operating systems up, connected to a network. You got choices here, right? This is. I've got some machine, it does nothing, it's going to come up on a network. You got Pixie booting, Cobbler, System Imager, EC2, Rackspace, VMware, Zen, KVM. These are all ways that you can get an operating system up talking on a network. You can find things that you provision by name, right? So I provisioned a bunch of servers. Now, where are they? Answer, DNS, right? You got choices here too. You can use Bind, you can use DGB DNS, you can use Power DNS, Dyn, Route53, Ultra DNS. However you do it, it's cool. The trick is everything has to be there. So if you have this little host where you're like, we don't need to do that in DNS, yes you do. And if you don't think those people exist, they certainly do. I've done M&A on those companies. So, server inventory. You got to keep track of the things you've built. If you don't know what you have, you will lose it eventually. I will tell you a funny story. I worked for a company that we had merged with, and we inherited their infrastructure, and we inherited their on-call rotation. And one night, we got this page, and all it said was, "It's happening, ... And we're like, what's happening? And we sent an email out to everybody, and we're like, what's this mean? And they're like, oh, that's the fastball special. And I'm like, what's the fastball special? And they're like, we don't know. And I'm like, well, where'd it come from? We don't know. Why don't you know? Well, we don't know. And then another page came in and it said it's happening, ... again. and these pages would just go off every week for a year, right? So whoever was on call, it's happening again, it's happening again, right? Sometimes it would speed up, sometimes it would slow down, but absolutely at least once a week. Until finally we started to do a server inventory, and we went through and we built a big list, and then any server that we couldn't get somebody to say they gave a shit about, we turned off. And we turned off like 150 computers, like servers and racks, like a lot of servers, 150, and we just turned them off. Nothing happened. Like, it was just fine. Right? Like, I'm sure something went down, but nobody cared. And also, it stopped happening. So, if you don't keep track of what you've built, it will happen to you, and then it will happen again. Config management, you gotta manage servers over time. I'm a config management dork, so later we can talk about that, but you got a lot of choices here too, but there's only one you should choose, which is chef. For the record, what that really means is you're going to build these servers, they're going to come up on a network, then you need to configure them to do whatever they're going to do, so serving applications, doing whatever, right? Identity management. Make it easy for people who need to log in. And for the record, almost everybody should be able to log in. People who are like, nobody should log into production, are crazy people who just want to stay up all night because they have to be on call because they're the guy who can log in. That's dumb. I can tell you why if we talk about operations, but it's stupid. So make it easy for people who need to log in. Do it through config management, add users, do it through LDAP, do it through Active Directory. Make it easy. Version control. You got to use it. Lots of it. Who doesn't use? Anybody use version control in here? I'm looking for the hands that don't go up. Yeah, lie. Okay. You got to do it. Mr. T will come and beat you up if you don't do it. So I see the fool who doesn't use version control. All right. Monitoring and trending. Use the inventory system to configure monitoring. You need to automatically build monitoring for everything that you put into the inventory system. This helps you keep your inventory system up to date, right? So, you got options here too. Nagios, Xenos, Zabbix, Chronos, Patapig, Datadog. Here, there's more. Pick one, just do it. Application deployment, you gotta make it easy to deliver new releases. You got lots of choices here too. You've got Chef, Puppet, Capricorn, Fabric, Cloud Foundry, For Loops, and Heroku. For this, making it easy is the important part here, right? So it needs to be as easy as you can possibly make it to push new code to production. You need to be able to just do it often, right? Truthfully, like, I have opinions about what's nicer or better or whatever, but it doesn't matter. Just get to a place where you can do it easily, and then worry about how gross the implementation was later. Next.
Managing operations.
Managing operations. Spoke with a clear voice. Alright. Historically, our job has been to be professional road blockers. When people come to us and ask us for things, this is true of me too. When you would come to me and ask me, can I do foo, my default answer was no. And then I would put headphones back on and turn back around. and then if you came back again, I would listen. Right? So by default, no. Because if you didn't, it wasn't important enough to come back, then it wasn't important enough to destabilize the system, right? And we were trained to do this because we got taught that change was bad. And mostly what we learned was that we were on the hook for every stupid ass thing a software developer ever did in their life. Would page me at 2 in the morning. Some software developer thought it would be cool to send a page that said it's happening. That wasn't a sysadmin. He wouldn't have written anything at all, right? That was the software developer who was like, I'm helping out, right? And like, so we learned to be professional road blockers because if there had been a sysadmin who he had gone to and asked and said, hey man, can I put in this alert that will say it's happening to the SMS? The dude would have said no and turned around and it would have been cool. But that didn't happen, and so here's the problem. So the reason is that responsibilities are out of whack, right? When it works that way, when you're responsible for other people's work and they just get to throw it over, suddenly your job is to make sure that they don't fuck you. And that's just not a very healthy working relationship, right? So you have to fix the responsibilities if you want to run a good operations team. And operations is responsible for 2 things, and this will help to reset these responsibilities. Because once you realize that these are the 2 things operations does, there's a whole raft of things that you realize you don't do, and you need to get other people to do and teach how to deal with it. And so ready for the 2 things, I'm going to make you repeat them, so pay attention. If you're sleepy or whatever, perk up. System availability. If it's down, bring it back up, right? So, is the system down? If so, bring it back up. You got it, all right. The other thing you're responsible for is efficiency. And this is not efficiency of the server. This isn't like How much power are we drawing, right? This is efficiency of the business and every single person around you. So every single person around you who's trying to do their job, it's your job to make it easy for them to do their jobs, right? And if you make it harder for them to do their jobs, you're screwing up the second thing you're responsible for. So, if the system isn't on fire, what then should you be thinking about? Efficiency. That's right, making people more efficient, making them happier, making them do their job better. So you should be doing things like setting standards, right? So for all those things that you would like to do, I did a job once where I went out and I interviewed everybody in this team. They had like 100 software developers, and they had 2 or 3 systems administrators and like a manager. And it took them 3 months to install a server, right? So from, I need a server, to, here's your server, it was 3 months of time. And they came to me and they were like, we don't know how to fix this, there's so many of them. And I'm like, well, how about you put them on a bus? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, you know how to put servers in racks, right? And they don't, and if you send them out there, they'll screw it up. And they're like, yeah, so we can't do it. I'm like, well, no, you could write it down, and then you can put them on a bus, and you could tell them if they want a server tomorrow, they can have it, they just have to get on the bus, go to the data center, and do it your way. And then you certify that they did it. Set a standard, right? And then all of a sudden, all sorts of people can follow your standards. So you have to set standards, you have to troubleshoot. If something is wrong, the truth is software developers are not very good at fixing them in production, right? The number of systems administrators who look like full stack engineers at the mid-level versus the number of software developers who look like full stack engineers at the mid-level, there's way more systems administrators. Doesn't mean that software developers aren't smart or become full stack engineers, it just takes a little while longer. So you're better at troubleshooting, so be there to do that. Enable everybody. So when people are blocked or they can't get things done, your job is to open it up. And finally, just be the fire department, right? If it goes wrong, you've got to fix it. So you need to push responsibility out to the edges. So what this means is developers have to be on call for the code that they write, right? If you write code that goes into production, that runs a business, and it breaks, you wrote it, you fix it, right? Who all is a developer, and are you on call? Yeah, anybody who's not on call and is a software developer and gets to kick it over to sysadmins? Yeah, you love that. Look at that smirky smile. He's like, yeah.
It's horrible.
He's like, I'm still married. They're all divorced. Okay. So, systems administrators should be escalated to by the software developers. So this doesn't mean that all software developers have to become competent systems administrators. They do need to become competent enough to operate their application on the infrastructure it runs on. That's not a super high bar. But you need to then get to a place, they're going to have problems, they're going to encounter things they don't know how to fix or how to troubleshoot, and they need to be able to get a systems administrator to help them. That's awesome. Do that. What's up, Chief? Don't raise your hand, just talk.
How do you convince the sysadmins to give root to the developers?
Well, here's the easy one. Do you want to be on call for the rest of your life? Answer?
Not really.
No.
Yeah, not really. So here's how you get off. They get root. Woohoo! You know why you're afraid of giving them root? Unless you have a compliance thing, which you don't, probably. Maybe you do. Well, actually, you're the Globo dude. You probably do, but I don't know what compliance is like for you. But it doesn't matter. Point is, unless you have a reason they can't do it, it's so much better to just let people do it. And you have policies and procedures, and if they break it, you'd be like, dude, why did you delete the whole server? And they'll be like, I don't know. Because I'm a software developer, and you made me log in. Well, here's the standard I wrote that told you not to do that, so stop it, right? It's easy. It's really easy to get sysadmins to let that go. What's that? You raise your hand too, which is just an anti-pattern.
Guess who gets to fix it though? What would you think the punishment should be if they do delete the server?
Oh, dude, it's the first thing you should do is give them up. Because they're probably freaking the fuck out, right? What's that?
Most developers don't like to make content.
But that's cool, they'll get over it. Most sysadmins don't either, that's why there's more hugging, less assholes, right? Yeah, you work it out. But the first thing, you actually, we can talk about postmortems, but not blaming somebody who makes mistakes is really important, because that's actually what culturally enables you to trust each other to get the work done. So if you're mean to people when they make mistakes, they will then try to not do any work so they don't screw it up, and then they're all freaked out and they're all tense, and that makes them screwed up, and then you come in and you're like, why are you an idiot? And it's not cool, so don't do it. But instead, be nice to them and help them and teach them why they did it wrong. And then if it's just something that happens over and over and over again, maybe fire them because they're incompetent. But most likely set a standard that makes it a little harder to do that, but probably not as far as ripping away their access. This is another thing. You need to drill. And the reason you have to drill is because one of the things that happens when you push this responsibility to the edges is you need to get people used to the fact that failure is same idea that like, if that guy screws it up, part of the reason he screws it up is because he's never done it before, and the only time he ever gets to is when like money is on the line, right? You know, if you work at a website that makes up $1 million a minute, and you ask the junior developer to be on call and he breaks it, he's going to lose his mind. Because the idea that he's lost millions of dollars a minute it'll freak him all the way out. But if you drilled, if you got into this thing where it's like, you know what, failure is normal, it's going to happen, we're going to break the website today at 2 o'clock and you're going to fix it. Like, that actually gets you to a place where when people react to failure, it's normal. It's just the operating of the system. It's how things go. Things are going to break and we're going to fix it. We're going to be really, really good at it. And if you think you can't drill, I'll use an analogy that will make you think you can, which is this. Let's say you go to your fire department. And there's a bunch of firemen, and they're all big fireman dudes, and they've got trucks and hoses and everything. And you're like, wow, how did you guys learn to be firemen? And they're like, learn to be firemen? I just got the job because I'm buff and I carry the hose. And you're like, well, how many fires have you fought? And they go, none. And you're like, why not? And they're like, well, because to train we have to burn a house down. And that's crazy talk. Like, would you feel cool about that? Would you like your firemen? Like, no, you want them to burn a fucking house down in a controlled environment and learn how to be a fireman. Because, like, if you just took a bunch of firemen and were like, that house is on fire, run inside! Like, they're going to be terrified. And why would you expect that you would be any better? So drill. Drill, drill, drill. You're going to take metrics. So this is some tips on how to get this done. So, you know, getting people to log in the root or whatever, that's easy. It's harder sometimes to tell your boss that he needs to let all those dudes log in as root and destabilize the system. And the way you're going to get there is by you're going to take metrics that tie to money. And so you're going to take all those times you go down, or all those times that you get woken up at night, and you're going to take all of how much that costs. You're going to look at your salary, and you're going to look at the cost of your divorce, and you're going to look at all of those sorts of things. I'm happily married, for the record. And you're going to tie them back to dollars. So you're going to say, you know what, every time the website goes down right now, it costs us $2. It takes us this long to recover. And you're going to say, if we do what I'm saying right now, in 4 months, I will drive this number down to near 0, or I will drive it down by a fifth or a third. But you just have to talk about it in terms of money. You can't talk about culture. You can't be like, it's DevOps and it's cool, or like it's the cloud and it's going to be fine, or it's self-healing. Just talk about fucking money. Because the guys who actually need to support you to do this are your bosses, and they care about money. Even if they're nice bosses and they seem like they don't care about money, care about money. So when you say no, you don't just say no. You should actually just be saying yes to something more important, right? So as a systems administrator, you should be saying, I'll say yes if you take the responsibility for it. So if somebody comes to you and says, can I log into the servers as roots and change the website by hand? Yeah. You can say to them, that's maybe a bad idea. But if you will take responsibility for doing that, I will make sure you how if there's a really good business case to do it, right? You're not saying no, you're saying, well, I don't know, dude. Why do you think you need to do that? And let's work through what that means. And if you really need to do it, I will help you get you there. But you didn't just say no out of the box. Managers and executives, this is the thing you have to live and support. You have to support every single person in your organization actually going through this process if you want them to become better operationally. If the managers and executives don't do this, if the managers and executives get to parachute in and be all blamey to the people who work underneath them and reach down and ruin your postmortems, yes, quit, because they're assholes. But, you know, they have to do it. New choices. Yeah, do random advice. Shoot.
How do we teach the next generation of sysadmins, and how do you start your career? There's a big gulf between lots of experience and day one of the job.
So the question was, how do we train another generation of sysadmins if there's a big gulf between day one and being good at your job? I honestly think the answer is you hire people who are curious, who like to work, and who just kind of relentlessly can't not be sysadmins. And that unfortunately does mean that the scope is kind of narrow. The process of actually becoming a great sysadmin, I think, ties really directly in to that innate curiosity and that innate desire to work. I think somebody said that in the lightning talk yesterday. And I think that's really it. I think when you get down to like how you go about training people or what the program looks like, I think you need to teach them how to code. I think you need to teach them, they don't have to be great software developers, but they need to understand the basics, right? Like what a variable is, like an array and a hash, right? Like good enough to get through the llama book. So there you go. That's my answer.
Building open source.
DevOps? I heard building open source communities. Just say it louder next time and I'll do it. Yeah, well, even if you're slow, I'll cheat. Okay, because I like that one, it's got the rock in it. So, DevOps. DevOps is a cultural and professional movement. Got it? So we can just quit, right? So it's cool, everybody understand? That's all it is. It's cultural and it's professional. So it's a way of being, it's a culture, it's a thing you live, it's a person you are, it's a thing you do, it's a part of you. And then it's a professional thing. It's also a discipline, and it's a way of communicating, a way of behaving in your job, right? So it's a culture, like hip-hop, and it's a professional thing, like being an MC. Although you'll note that that's a different word than the cultural thing. Because it is not, still not, a job description. This guy had an awesome job. He was Luke Howard, namer of clouds. That was his official job title. He's the guy who named, like Cirrus and all that stuff, which is kind of cool, but this is not you. When you think to yourself as a sysadmin, I want to be a DevOps, you are doing yourself and other people just this wicked disservice. Because as a sysadmin, my personal experience has been that I'm often regarded as less than software developers. People who are great at software development or good at software development are seen as being really great. People who can't write code or can't do those things, they're not valuable. And by being a sysadmin, it's the job you get because you just couldn't hack it as a software developer, right? And we sort of internalized that as a group, like that trauma and that repetitive beating into you that you're not as good as they are takes its toll eventually, and it makes you want to change your name. It's the thing that makes you want to go move to another city, grow your hair long, and start dating the other gender, right? And so it's still not a job description, and the idea that you want it to be a job description is sort of foul. So how did we get to DevOps? What does it actually mean to be DevOps? Well, it starts with traditional systems operations, right? So how many people work for an ISP at their first job? That's a lot of the room, for the record. And what's cool about that is we're all roughly the same age. I can say with a pretty solid certainty, we're all somewhere between maybe 29 and 30 and 40, right? And if you're in that span, that you were just right there when the internet was happening, right? And we all didn't have a lot of references for how to build stuff on the internet. What we did was we went and bought the Armadillo book, and we went and bought the Unix Systems Administration Handbook, right? And we read those books, and then we took those things and we tried to do it to build our ISPs. And for the most part, it just didn't fucking work at all, right? It worked for a minute, but trying to do backups the way they told you to, and installing printers and all the shit you had to do where you were I printed out every log message that went by. Did anybody ever do that? I totally did, because it told me to in the book, and I tried it, and then my logs were so big, and I had all this traffic. And then I asked somebody, do you do that? And they're like, well, yeah, but there's no activity, so it's cool. There's a page. I had a box. Anyway, don't do that. It was just horrible advice, right? Because it didn't fit who we were at all. And so we built a new discipline. We called that discipline WebOps, right? We were working on the web, doing operation stuff, and we had to figure out a new way of doing that work. And that new way eventually evolved into this thing we call DevOps, which really just means that we're focused more on the business. We're focused more on delivering value to the business through operating this infrastructure. We care more about operating things than we care about installing printers or doing IT. And that WebOps thing, most of us started out looking like this, because this is how companies historically have been structured, right? How many people have an organizational structure that looks like this? Okay, it's pretty common, right? You've got software developers who have directors who go to some VP, right? Network engineers, and the thing about this is never the twain shall meet, right? These dudes don't go to lunch together, they don't hang out, they don't talk to each other, they don't walk by and be like, hey, what are you doing, systems administrator? And he's like, I'm installing software. And the security engineer's like, I love that software. And the software developer's like, I wrote that shit. They don't do that together, right? Because they have different bosses, and they sit in different parts of the building and everything. And what it means is, you don't talk to each other, and eventually you become the enemy, right? Eventually it's I hate network engineering, because network engineering never lets me do what I want. Meanwhile, the network engineering guys are actually kind of nice, but you stopped talking to them 3 years ago because that one time he was an asshole and turned around and put his headphones on, right? It's all together, man. It's all looped up. So, what you need to do is something that looks more like this, right? You need to get the director kind of out of the way, and everybody needs to be in a big fucking pile, right? Where, software developers, network engineers, systems administrators, security engineers, we think of ourselves more as peers and as friends, and we're having fun together, and we're mentoring each other in our different disciplines, right? When you walk up and see a network engineer configuring BGP, I totally want to see how to do that. I totally want to know how that works. And I have no idea, right? I'm terrible at it. And so if I could watch, I would totally do it. I would hang out and be like, dude, that's awesome, and you would be so cool. I'm great at writing configuration management code. I'm really fast at it. I can automate stuff really, really quick. I would love to show any single person in this room how I do it. It's super fun. I'd love to do it. If if you're a great software developer, like I was at the bar with Brian Cantrell, and like that dude is one of the best people on the planet at debugging operating systems and debugging application stacks. And if you could watch him do his work, wouldn't that be awesome? But you don't get to because you don't have the same director. So, fuck you, right? So, it turns out that like what the directors and managers and those people need to do is support all of these people in coming together and realizing that it takes all of those people and all of those disciplines to do their job. It doesn't mean that everybody does everybody else's job or you stop being a specialist. Look, you're going to be a specialist, you're going to learn new skills, but you should be broad enough and interested enough to learn what other people are doing and how those things work. It turns you into a better engineer, it makes your career arc better, you have way more fun doing it, and there's way more interesting people you get to talk to at bars. One of the ways you know that you're actually kind of feeling the culture appropriately, that you've actually found the correct loads on the culture, because there is some people who kind of try to turn this in a different direction, is that it's very, very inclusive, right? We use a lot of words like awesome and happy and cool, and we talk about the cool stuff we build, right? Because we're building it, and we just don't care, and we've got like friends who are helping us out, and like Arthur's fixing my reverse proxy, right? And Jason's doing some monitoring, and like, it's cool, right? There are exclusive people in this movement. They're grumpy, they are tool-centric. I've had people in this talk be like, I hate Chef, you should use Puppet, and I'm like, you're a dick, right? And it's not because I think, like, I hate the Puppet guys, right? Like, I fix people's Puppet code on a regular basis, honestly. And I will fix it for you. If you have a Puppet problem, I maybe could fix it. And if I can't, I'll tell you to call those guys. But they're tool-centric. They care more about their tools than they care about the problems, and they care about the tools more than they care about you, right? And it's very us versus them, right? They think about protecting their silo or their thing, or they're looking for leverage, and they're DevOps and you're sysadmins. This is the worst, right? Because they're the people who have kind of embraced that idea that they were lesser than you, and now they're beating you up with their bullshit job title that's unreal. So, join the inclusive people, more here. Next.
Open source community.
There we go, look on the draw. Also cool hair. Okay. Look at it, it's awesome hair. I can't have hair like that, dude. I have like one hair. Okay. Building open source communities. That's Barack Obama smoking a cigarette. I hope he still smokes. Does anybody else hope he still smokes? I know he's not supposed to, but I totally want him to. I'm like, I get it. Smoke, dude. Okay. Open source developers are like guys who love classic cars. So, the thing about classic cars are people who like them like to look at the pretty ones, but they take the ugly ones home, right? Classic car guys go to car shows, they look at beautiful cars like, oh my god, that's such a cool car, but they don't buy the car, right? They're not like, oh, I can't wait to buy that perfect car. No, dude. They find the rusted out old Chevelle that's sitting in the backyard, and they take that thing home on a truck, because they want to fix it, they want to build it, they want to lovingly, buff out the rust, right? And the same thing's true with open source people. When you think about open source projects and the evolution of open source communities, they are people who come together around a broken car. They have a problem, they have a thing, they want something to be better, they want to be different in some way, and they can't help themselves. And they don't want the perfect thing. Even if the perfect thing is out there, even if there's a thing that could solve their problem, they don't want it, man. They want to work on the car. And so we form communities around these shared passions that we have, right? We're all passionate about something together. We form a community around that thing. And it's very, very intentional, right? We find those communities, we seek them out because we want to work with other people who share our passions. It's the reason why dudes who like classic cars call their buddies up and they come over on the weekend and drink beer, right? Because they're all passionate about cars and they're all passionate about that Chevelle, right? They care about that pinstripe we're putting on that Chevelle. And the same thing's true about the open source communities that we built. They're very, very intentional. And they catalyze usually around a steward. And in the classic car world, this is the guy who owns the car, right? Whoever bought the Chevelle is the guy who runs the Chevelle club, right? In the open source world, it tends to be the guy that started the project. Or it tends, in other things too, where this sort of community building, you've got, like, that's Gaudi and Lady Gaga, right? Like, there are these communities that have catalyzed around these people, and these people have taken on this role of stewardship. And the thing about a steward is that stewards don't govern, right? Stewards don't tell you what to do. Stewards just make sure everything's going okay, right? They just take care of stuff, and you and other people. Governance is different. Governance happens when communities get big enough that they have conflict and there's something to govern, right? So governance implies that there's a thing to govern, that there's a rule, there's an authority, there's a hierarchy. And there's a thing that can happen in open source projects, especially commercial open source ones, where people miss the fact that they have to have stewardship. the thing about stewards is you can't take a stewardship away. Like, can you imagine someone kicking Larry Wall out of the Perl community? Like, how would you do that? Or Guido out of Python, be like, I hate that guy. He's not the benefit declared for life anymore, let's revolt. Like, you can't do it, right? And even if they set up a governance structure where you got to vote and be like, you 5 guys are on the Python ruling council and we voted off Guido. Like, it wouldn't work, because he's Guido, and you're not, right? And so, with open source projects that are corporate, often they choose governance first. They skip the need to find a steward, or to have a steward, or to be good to people, or actually kind of have that soul of the thing. And instead, they go straight to governance. They try to build a big coalition of people who are going to help them run their project. And it all falls apart, because in the end, you can't leapfrog stewardship. It's the core thing that gives open source communities legitimacy. So if your projects are going to grow, if your desire is to build an open source project that lots of people will like and they will contribute to, you have to make it a cool place to come and work. You have to make it a place where people want to come and be and feel good about themselves and to share. And if you go directly to governance and to authority and to closing it up and making it about you and not about each other or about the car, then you lose your legitimacy just like East Germany did. Next.
Sales and marketing.
Okay. Sales and marketing. Does anybody know what these are? These are smiling mugs, right? Which are cool. I want one. So, if you're German or whatever, and you know where to find me, Schmunzeltassen, I want one. Okay. Marketing brings you leads, right? So, this is sales and marketing for sysadmins. So, I should be brief. So, marketing brings in leads, right? So, a lead is a person who could buy your shit, right? Is the simple answer. You don't know if they're gonna or not. They're just nearby enough to whatever you do that it seems like they could think about it, right? And they run these things they call campaigns. So when a marketing guy says, I'm running a campaign, what he's looking for are leads. He's trying to bring people nearby whatever you sell to see if they'll do it. And then they do nurturing to help convert them to what are called qualified prospects. So when I realized that you're not just nearby, you're not just like hanging out in front of the yogurt shop, you actually are hungry for some yogurt. Now you're a prospect. You've been qualified. I now know that you want to buy something, right? And then you go into the funnel, and they call it a funnel. I think it's kind of gross that it's a funnel, but they call it a funnel, man. What are you going to do? And it's sort of a pipeline. And this is where the salespeople live. Salespeople live and die by this funnel. And they take these leads, they get converted to prospects through qualification, and some percentage of them will convert. And when you convert, you go all the way down this pipeline, right? There's numbers here that I have fudged out because this is actually our pipeline from Opscode, right? And so I'm not going to just show you how many people are in my pipeline. So, but there's people, and they're going to buy my shit someday. Those dudes are going to buy my stuff, right? And everybody else, maybe they will, maybe they won't, I don't know, right? They're moving through the pipeline. And we call the process of moving someone through this pipeline, and this is also kind of a gross word, they're being prosecuted. You prosecute leads, okay? Which, yeah, right? Think about that for just a second. What are you doing? I'm prosecuting leads. The prosecutor. Hey, Ronnie, do you prosecute leads? How many leads do you prosecute today? He doesn't even know. So many leads. 5 leads. Okay, so here is the whole thing in a nutshell in one slide. You ready? This is your customer. And you want to turn the customer into money, right? But the customer is a wily customer. It's a sneaky customer. And they've got this whole big screen to run around on. They don't want to run down there and become money because they have free will. So you build a trap. And you're like, sweet! Now my customer can't help but turn into money, right? Because they got nowhere to go now. So come on, customer, to the money pit, right? Except they won't do it because there's holes at the top of my trap, right? It's unfortunate. And the customer's smart. They see the trap a mile away. Like now, even before, they were kind of befuddled. They maybe knew they didn't want to become money, but they weren't kind of scared of it. But now they see a trap. They're like, there's a fucking trap over there. I'm not going over there, dude. Looks like a trap. So you hire a sales guy. And the sales guy scares them. Ah! Right? And they run into the trap. Because the sales guy it's just like, go, man! And so they run down and they become money. And you're like, this was so great, right? I'm making money. I'm a sales guy. Leads are converting. Prosecuting stuff. It's dope. Except now, not only do you have a trap, you have a sales guy hanging out in front of the trap, right? So now when people kind of come by your yogurt shop, they're like, is that a sales guy out front? I'm not going over there, right? And so now you know there's a dude who's going to shove you in the trap if you get too close, so you stay further away. And so then you have to go get marketing guys, right? And their job is to make the alternative of running into the trap seem so bad that you just do it anyway, right? And so they put in the flaming dragon of marketing, and he's like, ah! And then everybody runs in the trap. Except now, marketing was so successful, you've got too many leads. There's too many people in the funnel for one sales dude to prosecute. Because they're spilling out the top, right? Stephen Colbert, he can only get the first couple dudes. And so we've got to hire more sales guys, right? And then they fill the top of the funnel, and then everybody becomes money. And that is sales and marketing.